Have you ever heard your house breathe, like it's alive? That's how my story begins. Because that's what I heard the night everything changed. I had always thought the creaks and groans of my old house in Vermont were normal, the wooden floors expanding, the pipes moaning in winter. I lived alone after my divorce, in a 2-story farmhouse my grandparents left me. It was quiet, isolated, and comforting in a way, until that night in November. It was around 11:47 p.m. when I first noticed it. The sound wasn't just the floor settling. It was rhythmic. Almost like breathing. A slow, labored inhale. Then an exhale that made the walls tremble softly. At first, I laughed it off, maybe the wind, maybe my tired mind playing tricks after too much whiskey. But then I realized, there was no wind. The night outside was perfectly still. I turned off the TV, stood up, and listened. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Closer now. My heart started to pound. I followed the sound toward the staircase. Every step groaned under my weight. The air felt heavier, thick, like the atmosphere before a thunderstorm. Then I heard something else. A whisper. Soft, faint, coming from somewhere inside the walls. "You're not alone, Daniel." I froze. That voice, it wasn't my imagination. It was inside the wall, right behind the staircase. I pressed my ear against the drywall. Silence. Then, a single tap. Once. Twice. Then 3 slow knocks, like someone trapped behind it. I stumbled back, my pulse racing. My rational mind screamed that it couldn't be real. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and pointed it at the wall. Nothing seemed out of place, except a small line of fresh cracks running up toward the ceiling. The clock hit midnight. And then, the power went out. Darkness swallowed the entire house. My flashlight flickered to life, its weak beam trembling with my hand. I could hear the wind picking up outside now, or maybe that's just what I told myself. Then came the whisper again, clearer, right next to my ear this time. "He's awake now." I turned around so fast I dropped the flashlight. The beam rolled across the floor, illuminating the hallway, empty, then stopped on the bottom of the staircase. A pair of wet footprints led up the steps. Bare, human footprints. Fresh. Dripping. But I hadn't left my seat all night. The air turned freezing cold. My breath fogged in front of me. Then, somewhere upstairs, a door creaked open. Slow. Long groaning on its hinges. I grabbed my phone, its battery at 3%, and turned on the flashlight. The screen glowed faintly as I dialed 911, but the call never connected. Just static. And beneath the static, a faint whisper, the same voice again. "Don't call them. They can't help you." The screen flickered. My phone died. And from upstairs came the unmistakable sound of footsteps, heavy, dragging footsteps moving from one room to another. Then they stopped. Right above me. The ceiling groaned. Dust fell. Something, or someone, was standing in the upstairs hallway. Listening. The house exhaled again. A long, slow breath, like lungs filling with air after years underwater. And I realized with a sickening chill, the sound wasn't coming from inside the walls. It was coming from the house itself. Like it was alive. And it had just woken up. The voice behind me froze me in place. It wasn't a whisper this time, it was deep, guttural, and close enough that I could feel its breath brush against my neck. For a long moment, I didn't move. I couldn't. My heart was hammering so hard I could hear it echo in my skull. Slowly, with a trembling hand, I turned my flashlight behind me. The beam sliced through the darkness, catching only dust, cobwebs, and the old mirror at the end of the hall. My reflection stared back, pale, wild-eyed, and shaking. There was no one there. No one, but I could still feel it, that presence lingering behind me, heavy and suffocating, like the air before a scream. I backed away toward the stairs, my breath uneven. Each creak of the wooden floor sounded louder, closer, almost alive. I reached the bottom step when I noticed something strange. The wet footprints that had led upstairs, they were gone. Completely vanished, as if they had sunk back into the wood itself. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "Who's there?" I called, my voice cracking. No answer. Only silence. Thick, humming silence that made my ears ring. I turned toward the staircase again, shining my flashlight up, and for a brief second, I saw movement, something shifting just beyond the railing on the landing. It was quick, too quick to catch fully, but enough for me to know I wasn't alone. I took one cautious step up, then another. The air grew colder the higher I climbed, until I could see my breath in thin, ghostly clouds. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched out into darkness. Every door was slightly open, like something had passed through each one. My flashlight's beam trembled as I swept it across the walls, family photos, old portraits, peeling wallpaper. But then I noticed something new. The wallpaper near the end of the hall had been torn away, exposing raw wood. In the center, there was a small rectangular outline, just large enough for a person to crawl through. I approached it cautiously. It looked like some kind of hidden door, sealed shut with nails and painted over years ago. My heart was racing again. I didn't remember that being there before. I touched it. It was cold, unnaturally cold. The edges of the wood pulsed faintly under my fingers, like there was something breathing behind it. That same rhythmic inhale and exhale I had heard downstairs began again, deeper now, stronger, almost syncing with my heartbeat. I stumbled back, gripping the flashlight tighter. That's when the whisper returned, soft, trembling, right against my ear. "He's been waiting for you, Daniel." I spun around, the beam jerking across the walls. Empty. Nothing. Only the sound of my own breathing. But then, faintly, from behind that hidden door, I heard something moving. Not footsteps this time. Scraping. Fingernails dragging against wood. Followed by a low, guttural moan that made my blood run cold. I stepped closer despite every instinct screaming at me to run. I had to know what was inside. I found a small hammer on the floor, one I must have dropped weeks ago while fixing a shelf, and began pulling out the nails. Each one squealed as it came loose, echoing through the silent house. When the last nail came out, the wood shifted on its own. Slowly. Groaning. It opened just enough for the smell to hit me, a stench so foul, so old, it made me gag. Like rot. Like something had been trapped inside for years. I pointed my flashlight through the opening. The beam fell on something that looked like a small, windowless room, no bigger than a closet. The walls inside were lined with old insulation and dark stains I didn't want to identify. And in the far corner, there was a figure. It was small. Child-sized. Kneeling. Facing the wall. Its skin was pale gray, stretched too tight, and patches of its hair clung to its scalp in thin, greasy strands. For a long time, it didn't move. Then, slowly, its head began to turn, all the way around. Its eyes were white and sunken, like two hollow pits. Its lips peeled back into a smile that didn't belong to anything human. "You shouldn't have opened it," it whispered. I stumbled backward, dropping the flashlight. The beam spun wildly across the floor before going out completely. I crashed against the wall, trying to find my phone, but before I could, something cold and clammy gripped my ankle. It was strong, impossibly strong, and it started pulling me toward that dark hole in the wall. I screamed, kicked, clawed, but the hand wouldn't let go. Then I heard it again, another whisper, this time from inside the walls themselves. "He's awake now. And he's hungry." The house groaned violently. The floorboards began to crack beneath me. The air filled with a low, rumbling sound, like a growl, but deeper, shaking through my bones. I yanked free just in time and scrambled down the stairs, slamming into the living room, gasping for air. For a moment, everything went still again. The breathing stopped. The whispering stopped. I thought maybe, somehow, it was over. But then, the lights came back on. Every lamp, every bulb in the house flickered to life at once. And in that sudden glow, I saw something that made my stomach twist with terror. Every photo on the wall, every picture of me, my ex-wife, my parents, had changed. All of the faces were gone. Erased. Except for one. A single photograph near the front door showed me sleeping in bed, from the night before. And behind me, in the corner of that photo, stood the pale figure from the wall, smiling. The next morning, sunlight struggled to break through the thick gray clouds that hung over the valley. The farmhouse looked different in daylight, smaller somehow, older, and heavier with something unseen. I hadn't slept a single second. Every creak, every shift of the floor had kept my nerves raw. That photo still sat on the table, staring back at me like a confession. I'd tried to convince myself it was some twisted prank, maybe a neighbor, a break-in, but deep down I knew the truth. Whoever, or whatever, took that picture had been inside this house while I slept. The thought alone was enough to make my stomach turn. I tried calling the police again, but my phone had no signal, even when I stepped outside. The air felt off, still, suffocating, as if the entire property existed inside a bubble that reality refused to touch. I decided I couldn't stay there another night, at least not without knowing what I was dealing with. The only place I could think to start was the town records office, a few miles down the road. Maybe I could find something about the house's past. There had to be a reason it felt wrong. By noon, I was sitting in the dusty records room of the old county courthouse, flipping through yellowed property ledgers. The woman at the front desk, an older lady with foggy glasses and a quiet voice, had frowned when I told her the address. "Oh, you're living there?" she asked, voice trembling. "That place shouldn't still be standing." "Not after what happened." I froze mid-turn of a page. "What happened?" She hesitated, glancing around like she didn't want anyone to hear. "They called it the Halbert House." She lowered her voice even more. "Family went missing back in '78. A couple and their boy. People said the place was cursed long before that. Used to belong to a man named Reverend Halbert, some preacher who lost his mind after his son died. Folks said he tried to bring him back." I blinked at her. "Bring him back? You mean?" But she only shook her head. "He believed the house could breathe. Said it needed souls to stay alive." Her words hit me like ice water. My throat tightened. I looked down at the record book, and there it was, property of Reverend Thomas Halbert, acquired 1962. Notes scribbled beside it, renovations include cellar expansion, foundation reinforcement, hidden chambers. My pulse quickened. Hidden chambers. I remembered the sealed room upstairs. "Did they ever find the family?" I asked quietly. "No," she closed the book with a sigh. "Just bones. Under the floorboards." By the time I drove back home, the sun was already sinking behind the trees, bleeding orange through the clouds. The house waited for me at the end of the dirt road, dark and silent, as if watching. I wanted to turn around, but something stronger pulled me forward, curiosity, or maybe something the house itself wanted. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air was colder again. The smell of damp wood and rot hung heavy. Every light I turned on seemed dimmer than before, like the bulbs were being drained of power. I found myself standing at the base of the stairs again, staring at the spot where I'd seen the footprints. The wall where I'd opened the hidden door was still cracked open, but now it was empty. The small room behind it looked darker than ever, like the darkness was thicker there. I could feel the floor beneath me pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat buried under wood. I remembered the woman's words, "under the floorboards." Something in me snapped. I had to see for myself. I went to the shed, grabbed a crowbar, and pried open a loose plank in the living room. Dust puffed into my face, and beneath it, I saw something wrapped in what looked like burlap. I pulled it up, and the stench hit me immediately, sweet and rotten. Inside the cloth was a small wooden box, bound with rope. I unwrapped it with shaking hands, my stomach twisting. Inside the box was a pile of old, blackened teeth, and a child's toy truck, rusted and cracked. On the lid, faint letters had been carved with something sharp. "He sleeps until we remember." I dropped the box. My breath came fast, ragged. The house groaned again, deep and slow. I backed away, but the boards beneath my feet began to move. They bulged upward, as if something underneath was pushing through. I stumbled against the wall as one of the planks cracked open completely. A small, pale hand shot out from the gap, fingers long and thin, reaching. It clawed at the air, then gripped the floor, trying to pull itself up. I screamed, grabbed the crowbar, and smashed the plank shut. The hand withdrew instantly, but I could still hear scratching below, furious, desperate scratching. The breathing started again, louder this time, filling every room like a storm. I ran toward the front door, but when I pulled it open, I froze. The world outside was gone. No trees. No sky. Just endless, suffocating darkness, stretching beyond the porch. I tried stepping forward, but the moment my foot crossed the threshold, the air thickened, pushing me back. The house wasn't letting me leave. Behind me, something whispered in the dark hallway, a voice half human, half something else. "You woke him too soon, Daniel. He remembers now." The lights flickered violently. Upstairs, something began to walk again, slow, heavy, deliberate. The floor trembled with every step it took. I could feel it moving toward the stairs, descending one by one. I turned toward the sound, crowbar shaking in my hand. The last bulb in the living room exploded, plunging everything into blackness. And then, in the dark, I heard the faint, wet sound of breathing. But this time, it wasn't coming from the house. It was right behind me. The darkness that swallowed the room was absolute. I couldn't see my hands, couldn't see the floor, couldn't even tell if I was standing on wood anymore. It felt softer beneath my feet, like flesh, warm, pulsing faintly, almost alive. The sound of breathing surrounded me again, louder now, filling the house like 1,000 lungs drawing air at once. I lifted the crowbar and swung blindly behind me, striking nothing but air. "Stay away!" I shouted, though my voice cracked halfway through. The only response was a low, throaty chuckle, close enough to make the hairs on my neck rise. Then, without warning, the flashlight I thought I'd dropped hours ago flickered on by itself in the far corner of the room. Its beam pointed directly at me, as if someone was holding it. The light trembled, moved slightly, and I saw him, the figure from the wall. His body was smaller than a man's, but his face looked stretched, too long, his skin gray and sagging like melted wax. His eyes were hollow pits that seemed to pull the light inward. "You shouldn't have opened the door," he said again, voice crackling, breaking apart like static through broken speakers. I took a step back, gripping the crowbar so tight my knuckles ached. "What are you?" I whispered. The thing tilted its head, the skin on its neck tearing slightly with a wet sound. "I am what's left," it murmured. "He needs you, Daniel. The house is hungry." I turned and ran. I didn't think, didn't breathe, just ran, through the hallway, past the staircase, toward the kitchen. Every wall I passed seemed to pulse, swelling outward like something was pushing from the inside. Faces appeared in the wallpaper, brief, distorted human faces screaming silently before sinking back into the walls. The ceiling cracked, and a trickle of black liquid began to drip down, cold and oily, staining my shirt. I stumbled into the kitchen and reached for the back door, but it was gone. In its place was a wall, seamless and solid, as though the door had never existed. Panic clawed up my throat. The house wasn't just alive, it was changing. Suddenly, the floor beneath me lurched. I fell hard, the crowbar clattering away as the boards splintered open beneath my feet. I tried to scramble up, but something below was pulling me down, thin, bony hands clutching at my legs, dragging me into the dark. I kicked and screamed, feeling nails dig into my skin. "No! Get off me!" I shouted, slamming my elbow into the floor. Somehow, I wrenched free and rolled aside, gasping for air. My jeans were torn, blood smearing my calves where the fingers had clawed. I backed up against the counter, shaking violently. Then, the whispering began again, this time, not one voice, but dozens. Men, women, children, all speaking at once, overlapping, drowning one another out. He built this place for us. He promised we'd come back. Feed him, Daniel, feed him. I pressed my hands over my ears, but the voices didn't stop. They were inside my head. My vision blurred, colors bleeding into one another, and for a moment, the world shifted. The kitchen melted away like wet paint running down a wall. When it cleared, I was no longer standing in my house. I was in another version of it, a darker, older one. The wallpaper was gone, the furniture reduced to splintered wood. Candles burned in the corners, dripping wax onto bones scattered across the floor. In the center of the room stood a man in a preacher's coat, his back to me. He was murmuring a prayer in a language I didn't understand, his hands pressed against the floorboards. His voice trembled, desperate. "He will rise again," he said. "The house will breathe for him. The walls will remember." I took a step forward. "Reverend Halberd?" I said. My voice sounded strange, thin, like it didn't belong to me. The man stopped praying. Slowly, he turned toward me, and I saw his face, half rotted, the skin peeling from bone. His eyes glowed a sickly yellow. "He chose you, Daniel," he whispered. "You live here because he wants you to. The house brought you back." I shook my head violently. "No, I bought this house." He smiled. "Bought? You never left." The words hit me like a hammer. I stumbled backward, the world spinning. The air grew heavier, thicker, choking me. My lungs burned. The floor began to pulse again, faster, harder, like a heartbeat right beneath me. The Reverend lifted his hands and screamed a name I couldn't comprehend, a word that sounded older than language itself. The walls convulsed. The candles blew out. The entire room collapsed into blackness. When I opened my eyes, I was back in my own house, lying on the kitchen floor. The lights were flickering again, the air filled with the same rhythmic breathing. I could feel the heartbeat in the floor beneath my palms. It was alive, beating faster, stronger. I crawled toward the living room, dragging myself across the wood. The photo of me sleeping was still on the table, but now there was something new in it. Behind my bed, standing over me, was not the childlike figure I'd seen before. It was something taller, shadowed, faceless, its outline stretching up to the ceiling. And then, from the top of the stairs, I heard it. A deep, slow voice, not the whispering one this time, but something ancient, resonant, that seemed to come from the bones of the house itself. "He remembers you, Daniel. He always has." The walls began to bleed. Not red, black. Thick, tar-like streams running down the plaster, coating the pictures, soaking into the carpet. I screamed and backed into the corner, clutching the crowbar, though I knew it wouldn't save me. The voice came again, closer this time. "You woke him. Now, let him in." The front door blew open with a deafening crack. Cold wind rushed in, carrying whispers, laughter, cries. The darkness outside began to move, rolling like smoke, pouring into the house. It wasn't just darkness. It had shape. It had form. And it was coming for me. The wind that tore through the doorway wasn't natural, it had weight, a density that pressed against my skin like a living thing. I could smell earth and something sweet, like rot left too long in a grave. The shadows rolled across the floor, crawling up the walls, filling every corner the light had once touched. I stumbled backward until my spine hit the far wall, the crowbar slipping from my hands. For a long moment, all I could do was listen to it, the sound of the house breathing faster and faster, inhaling the darkness, exhaling a cold mist that made my vision blur. I tried to scream, but my throat locked up. The air was too thick. The shadows gathered at the center of the room, forming the outline of a man, tall, gaunt, and bending at angles no human body should. His face was still hidden, only a smear of darkness that pulsed and twisted. I could hear bones cracking with every slow step he took toward me. "Daniel," he said, his voice low and resonant, each syllable vibrating through the floorboards. You were never meant to leave this place. Something inside me broke. I shouted back, what are you? What do you want from me? My voice echoed uselessly. The figure stopped. For a heartbeat, the world went silent. Then he spoke again, clearer this time. You were what I wanted. You always were. I didn't understand, not at first. Then the memories started to flicker, like a reel of film coming apart. Images I couldn't recognize but felt deep in my bones, blood on the floor, a woman screaming, a boy's small hand slipping from mine. The reverends chanting, the walls shaking, a promise whispered in the dark. My head throbbed, the pain splitting through me like lightning. No, I whispered. That's not me. I didn't do anything. The figure moved closer. His form wavered, the darkness bleeding away until I could see his face. It was mine. Older, pale, eyes hollowed by years of something worse than death. You built this house, he said softly. You asked for it to breathe. You begged me to give it life. The walls around us pulsed, groaning as if in agreement. Faces began to emerge again, hundreds of them, screaming, sobbing, pleading to be free. I dropped to my knees, clutching my head. Stop! Stop! I shouted, but the voices only grew louder. The house was alive, yes, but it was more than that. It remembered everything. It remembered me. I saw flashes, me as the Reverend, decades ago, kneeling beside a dying child. My child. I had prayed, begged, offered my own soul to whatever would listen. Something had answered. It promised to give the boy life again, to make the house his new body. All it wanted in return was for me to stay, to keep feeding it. And when I died, it found a way to bring me back. Again and again. The house didn't just breathe, it reincarnated me, binding me to it. The truth struck like a hammer, I was never a new owner. I was the same man reborn, trapped in an endless cycle. Each time the house slept, it erased the past, let me forget, and waited until I returned home. And now, it was waking me up again. The shadow, my other self, smiled faintly. He's hungry, Daniel. You have to feed him. You always do. The floor beneath me split open, revealing the pulsating mass of black flesh I had glimpsed before. It throbbed like a gigantic heart, veins running into every wall, every beam, every inch of the house. The sound of breathing filled the world. The air vibrated. The walls bent inward, closer and closer, as if the house itself was inhaling. I screamed and grabbed the crowbar, slamming it into the floor, but it sank into the flesh like it was clay. The heartbeat only grew louder. The faces in the walls began to chant, voices overlapping in a horrible hymn. He lives in the walls. He lives in the bones. He remembers. I stumbled toward the front door, but it wasn't there anymore, just a wall of pulsing veins and teeth-like ridges. My vision blurred, my body shaking uncontrollably. I turned toward the shadow. If I'm him, I gasped, then let me end it. He smiled wider. Endings are for the living. The darkness surged forward, swallowing everything. I felt it enter my lungs, my mouth, my eyes, burning and freezing all at once. I screamed, or thought I did, but the sound was drowned out by the roar of the house exhaling for the last time. Then, silence. When I woke, sunlight streamed through the windows. The air was still again. The house looked normal, peaceful even. My hands were clean. The crowbar was gone. I stood up slowly, dazed. On the table lay a single piece of paper, folded neatly. My handwriting. I opened it and read. The house remembers. It always brings you home. Outside, a car pulled into the driveway. A real estate agent stepped out, followed by a young couple holding hands, their eyes bright with excitement. I tried to shout, to warn them, but my voice wouldn't work. I watched as the agent led them to the porch, smiling. The woman turned toward me through the window and waved, though she couldn't possibly see me. and then I realized I wasn't standing inside the house anymore. I was the house. The walls tightened, breathing in. The lights flickered softly. A new family was coming home.